If you want to understand how dangerous this is, stop thinking about the Strait of Hormuz like a line on a map and start thinking about it like the throat of the global oil system. A narrow stretch of water, barely wide enough in places to force order onto chaos, now sitting under the shadow of Iranian drones, fast boats, missile threats, and a US-led effort to push back. That is why this story matters. Not because it sounds dramatic on television, but because when this waterway breaks, prices, politics, and public nerves break with it. And right now, after weeks of Iranian disruption, attacks on ships, and a broader US-Israel war with Iran, the fight over Hormuz is no longer theoretical. It is active, dangerous, and already shaping the global economy. And here's the part that should get your attention immediately. The United States is not just issuing warnings anymore. According to reporting on the campaign to reopen the strait, U.S. and allied forces intensified operations with low-flying attack aircraft and Apache helicopters, hunting Iranian fast attack boats and drones threatening commercial traffic. That means this is not merely diplomacy backed by vague military posture. It is a real contest over who controls movement through one of the most important energy choke points on Earth. That changes everything, because once the U.S. Navy and allied air power are actively trying to beat back Iran's naval pressure, the story stops being, "Will this get worse?" and becomes, "How far can this escalate before somebody loses control?" That is the real nightmare for Tehran, because Iran's strategy in Hormuz has always depended on leverage, not comfort. It does not need to win a classic naval war. It only needs to make the lane feel unsafe, insurance feel expensive, and tanker captains feel unlucky. But once the United States decides that shipping cannot stay hostage to Iranian pressure, Iran is forced into a brutal game. Either keep escalating and risk losing more naval assets, drones, and coastal systems, or back off and look weaker after making one of the boldest plays in the region. And that is why this moment is so explosive. Iran has already shown it can make Hormuz ugly. CBS reported suspected Iranian drones hit ships in and around the strait, continuing attacks that paralyzed traffic through the vital lane. Other reporting described the waterway as largely cut off to global shipping, with diplomats scrambling and more than 40 countries discussing ways to pressure Tehran to reopen it. In other words, Iran proved it could turn a shipping route into a weapon. But proving you can create chaos is not the same thing as surviving what comes next when the world's biggest military and its partners start pushing back. And for a US audience, this is where the story gets personal fast. Most Americans are not waking up thinking about naval doctrine in the Gulf. They are thinking about gas prices, grocery bills, flights, shipping costs, and whether inflation is about to punch them in the mouth again. That is why Hormuz matters. Roughly a fifth of global oil and petroleum liquids consumption and more than a quarter of seaborne oil trade move through this choke point, along with about a fifth of global LNG trade. That means if the lane is threatened hard enough, America feels it even if the oil does not come directly from the Gulf to your neighborhood. Oil is global. Fear is global. Price is global. Now here is where the script most people are being sold is too simple. They hear U.S. Navy strikes back, and they picture a clean Hollywood sequence. American firepower shows up, Iranian boats get blasted, shipping resumes, problem solved. That is not how choke point wars work. This is not just about sinking a few fast boats. It is about drones, mines, anti-ship missiles, swarm tactics, coastal launchers, insurance markets, and the basic fact that commercial shipping does not return to normal just because one admiral gives a confident press statement. Confidence in delivery is what matters. If the market thinks ships can still get hit, delayed, or trapped, then the economic damage keeps running, even while military operations are underway. That is why the U.S. move is dramatic, but it is also risky. The moment Washington goes from threatening to actually clearing the lane by force, Iran gets a choice it hates. Either absorb losses and watch its pressure campaign weaken, or expand the battlefield. And Iran has already hinted that the pressure could spread beyond Hormuz. CBS reported Tehran also threatened another vital regional shipping lane, the Bab el-Mandeb. That means the U.S. is not just facing one dangerous channel. It is facing the possibility of a wider maritime pressure strategy designed to prove that even if America can punch hard, it cannot make global commerce feel safe overnight. And let's talk about what naval nightmare really means for Iran. It does not just mean losing ships, it means losing the illusion of easy control. Iran's strength in places like Hormuz comes from ambiguity, speed, and constant threat. Small boats, mobile missile systems, drones, and the ability to create fear cheaply. But once the US and allies start systematically hunting those tools, the math changes. Suddenly, every drone launch risks retaliation. Every fast attack swarm becomes a target set. Every missile team that fires reveals a position. And every day the campaign continues, Iran has to decide whether it is trading away real capability just to preserve the image that it can still close the throat of the world's oil system. That is the first big takeaway. Iran's strategy works best when the threat is bigger than the battle. America's counter-strategy works best when the battle makes the threat feel survivable. Whoever wins that psychological contest changes the global market almost immediately. Now here's the second big takeaway. The world does not need total closure to panic. It just needs enough disruption to start repricing tomorrow. Analysts and officials have already been gaming out ugly scenarios. CBS said some shipping and insurance experts do not expect normal flows to return until the war winds down significantly. And other reporting has described officials and analysts considering the possibility of oil surging toward levels that would hammer the global economy if the strait remained closed. This is why the military action matters so much. It is not only about reopening a channel, it is about stopping a fear premium from hardening into a new normal. And here is the concrete example Americans understand instantly. The gas pump does not care whether the crisis is technically partially resolved. It cares whether traders believe supply can move smoothly next week. If that belief cracks, the price goes up before the situation is officially called a disaster. That is how geopolitical stress enters ordinary life. Not as a map lesson, as a number on a pump, a shipping surcharge, or a higher airline ticket. When people say, "Why should I care about a naval fight thousands of miles away?" That is the answer, because the global economy translates distance into inflation with brutal efficiency. Now zoom in on the military side again, because this is where the story gets even more intense. Earlier in the crisis, officials had indicated the U.S. military was not yet ready to escort oil ships through Hormuz. That mattered, because it showed how hard the problem really was. But now the picture has clearly shifted from hesitation to active effort. If current reporting is right, the U.S. has moved from not ready to using warplanes and helicopters in a campaign to reduce the danger from Iranian armed boats, drones, mines, and missiles. That is a major escalation in posture, and it tells you Washington concluded the economic and strategic cost of waiting had become too high. And that is terrible news for Iran's naval playbook, because once America commits to sustained suppression, the burden moves on to Tehran. Iran has to keep proving it can still threaten shipping after every strike, every interception, every destroyed boat, every lost drone. It must stay scary while being hunted. That is a much harder mission than simply opening a crisis with a series of sharp attacks. Starting chaos is one thing. Maintaining it under relentless surveillance and counterattack is something else entirely. But let's be fair, because this is where hype can replace analysis. Does U.S. action guarantee a quick reopening and a clean victory? No, not even close. Even with heavy firepower, restoring confidence in a war zone can take longer than destroying targets in one. One successful Iranian attack after a day of U.S. bravado can reset the mood instantly. One mine, one drone strike, one burning tanker, one crew evacuation, and the whole market remembers that military superiority is not the same thing as commercial normalcy. That is why this is a nightmare, not a parade. So what happens next? There are really three paths. 1. The U.S.-led pressure works faster than expected. Iranian attacks become less effective, ships begin moving in greater numbers, and the panic premium starts leaking out of oil. 2. Iran keeps enough capability alive to make every transit feel dangerous, and the result is a slower, nastier squeeze on energy flows, shipping economics, and inflation. 3. The conflict widens, and what began as a Hormuz battle becomes a broader regional shipping war with even uglier consequences. Those are the paths that matter, not the loudest slogan on social media. My base read is this: the U.S. can hit back hard, but the real contest is not whether America can destroy targets. It is whether it can restore confidence faster than Iran can regenerate fear. That is the whole game. If confidence comes back, Tehran's naval gamble starts to look like an overreach that invited a punishing response. If fear stays in control, even after U.S. strikes, then Iran has proved something much bigger and much more dangerous, that a relatively cheap pressure campaign can keep the global economy off balance even under American fire, and that is why this story is so gripping. It is not just a clash of weapons, it is a clash of systems. Iran is trying to weaponize vulnerability. The United States is trying to prove that the system can still function under attack. The winner is not just the side that blows up more metal. It is the side that convinces the rest of the world that tomorrow's shipping lane will either be usable or terrifying. That is why the Strait of Hormuz keeps dragging the entire planet into the same argument. It is a tiny corridor with giant consequences, and once war enters that corridor, nothing stays local for long. Not oil, not inflation, not politics, not fear. So yes, the US Navy and allied forces are striking back. Yes, Iran is staring at a real naval nightmare as the pressure it created now invites sustained military response. But the ending has not been written yet, because in Hormuz, the first battle is fought with missiles and drones. The second is fought in the minds of shipowners, traders, insurers, and governments. And the side that wins that second battle does not just control a waterway. It controls the mood of the global economy.